Greeting everyone and welcome back to another interview with the masters in the area of the mind, body, soul connection and union. And if that's your first time watching these videos, my name is Nushin and I invite you to watch my first video, which I'm talking about the intention and the context behind this series. And today I'm so honored and excited to introduce to you a master coach, trainer, and consultant, Mr. Alan Kahn. In his own words, Alan is a disruptor for the status quo. And then also, he's an accelerator for the evolution. So, I could not be more excited to talk to you, Alan. And thank you so much for accepting my invitation and have this conversation with me.
Yeah, Nushin, and everyone listening, first off to you, you're welcome. This is our first time meeting face to face with the internet connecting us. And I want you to know, just through our contacts, through social media over the years, last few years, I feel like I know your heart. I feel like we are partners in what we're up to on this planet. I readily accepted your invitation for an interview, even though, as you know, I had no idea what this is all about, but I trust my heart.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And as you can feel it or see it, I'm just getting emotional for that connection. So thank you.
Yeah.
So speaking of the self-mastery, and I'm sure you have a great explanation for that, because when I say self-mastery, it's not the mask or that, social identity that we put it out there. It's the self that is just deep within us. We know there is something bigger right there. Yeah. So what's self-mastery to you?
Well, it's interesting, Nushin. I normally don't use that term. So, but when I hear you use the term self-mastery in the way you just described it, what it means to me is being able to have a created purpose, that's bigger than yourself, bigger than your ego, bigger than your history, maybe even a purpose that your mind, your brain, you don't have the thought, oh, I could do that, but it stretches you. And then self-mastery is living consistent with that purpose, being reliable for it. Since I don't use those words, a harmonic in the work that I do with myself and with others, I say that the game I'm playing with my life is to be reliable 24/7, even in my dreams, for expressing and being expressive of my purpose, my mission.
Yes, that's way beyond, I could express that. And talking about that, why do we need coaching for it?
Yeah, I don't know that we do need coaching for it, but when the word coach, normally we get exposed to it in the world of sports, or an acting coach, yes. Or so that's the origin of where that word first got used. And why do people have a coach is because a coach is able to see things that they can't see. So a coach can see, the hardest person to see is yourself.
Yes.
Because all of our senses focus outward. So a coach can help you see your blind spots. A coach can help you support you in your journey of mastery, to use your phrase. Otherwise, it is so easy to fool ourselves. The capacity for self-deception is enormous.
Yeah.
And a coach is able to support a player in fulfilling their purpose, fulfilling their intention, seeing what they don't see, not getting complacent like that.
Yes. It was so awesome to hear that, because I do coaching,
Yeah.
but in the arena of the body and the mind, because by trade I'm a massage therapist. And then it's just so great to see that the people, even they are not aware of what's going inside their own body. So I become like a coach to connect all that. And then in this context of conversation, we are talking about that self
Yes.
coaching or mastery. That
Yeah.
that was my intention to ask, why do we need coaching? No, we don't need that. But how a coach can bring
Yeah.
awareness to our own.
Yeah. And for me, and I, when I see a physician or a therapist, or a healer, my goal as a client or a patient is always to learn what I need to learn so I can provide self-care. So, one of the goals in my coaching, I don't know about yours, but in my coaching is to be useless.
Mm.
To have people set up the right environment, the right structures, the right practices in their life where they are what I tell people is they're getting their information from the same place I'm getting it. They're going right to the source, so they don't, I'm a middleman, so they don't need me. So in other words, I tell people I don't have a coach, but I have about 8 people in my life who I talk to every week or every other week because I trust that they'll support me and I'll support them in seeing things that I don't see. So they're a resource. So you want to set up your life in such a way where you're getting resourced. And in the beginning, a coach is a very useful tool.
Yes.
So I use it as a tool rather than a need.
Yes.
But that's just my own perspective.
Okay.
We need air, we need food. Otherwise, we die. But you can live your whole life without a coach, and you'll still die, but maybe not any sooner or later, right?
Yes.
But a coach, if you have a game you're playing that's bigger than you, a coach can help you win that game.
Yes. I'm glad you brought this, because it leads me to the next question, that how do we see our vision? How do we see that bigger purpose that we know is out there?
Yeah.
So how do we see that?
Yeah. That's a mystery for me, Nusheen, whether we see it or whether we create it.
Mm-hmm.
So some people believe we're born with that bigger purpose, and our job is to discover it and then live true to it. Mm-hmm. Other people believe we're born blank canvas, and our job is to create, not our job, but the opportunity of being alive is to create a bigger purpose than just survival, and then to live consistent with it. So I don't know, I'm not smart enough to know which is true. And I don't remember before I was born. So what I do know is having a purpose that's bigger than you, what some of us call an originating intent, creating an intention for your life. So for instance, mine is all hearts are full, all beings are enlightened. So that's my purpose. That's my reason for waking up in the morning. And I've had that for the last 5 years. And now the game is to look and see at each moment, am I living consistent with that, or consistent with my operating system, with my ego, with my shadow, with my past?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know if that answered your question. You should tell me if it did.
Absolutely. Not even you answered my question. Actually, you brought me deeper
Good.
to look at it.
Yeah.
That it's like I can distinguish it. That yes, do I have a vision, or I want to create a vision for myself?
Yeah.
Who I am, and as you said, wake up in the morning. What's my life for that?
Yes.
But I want to know that for those of us that we know there is something.
Yes.
We know our heart wants to do something, but we don't know how to navigate.
Yeah.
So where is the starting point for that?
Yeah. Well, I think you just we'll go full circle. That's what a coach is for, is how to start that. In my own journey, first it was coming up with that purpose. Then it was committing to live it.
Okay.
So, having a purpose and living a purpose are two different things. One is an idea, and the other is something that actually shapes the way you act, the way you perceive the world, the way you interact with the world, the way you relate to yourself. And that's up to you. I don't walk around and stand on a soapbox and say, you must find your purpose. But what I've noticed is there seems to be more and more literature, more and more information out there about why it's important to have a big purpose. And then once you get it's important and you try to live it, you realize how challenging that is. And that's where coaching can make an enormous difference.
Yes, yes.
But
and I love it. Go ahead.
And the way it started for me is once I had the purpose, when you're playing a game, you keep score. So the way it started for me is I started keeping score. At the end of every day, for several weeks, I would look back on my day and look at every single person I interacted with. Mm-hmm. And I would look to see, did I operate consistent with that vision or inconsistent? Yes. And then I'd create a percentage. And the name of the game was 100%, but all the time. Yeah, but that's not the reality of it. That's just the name that's the impossible game to play with your life, is to be reliable. Yes. For staying true to that purpose, that intention, that higher self, that who you really are. For me, it's always the outcome I want to produce with others. It's never about me. It's about me and everyone. So it's everyone's heart is full, and all beings are enlightened. And that's obviously will keep me busy for quite a while.
Yes, and by doing that, your heart is fuller.
Yes.
And that's how I see it, and that's who you are for me. So
thank you.
You're so welcome. And I'm just loving it because our conversation is just like going right to the next question that I want to ask.
Beautiful. Which
is, you said, like, you have a game, you have a vision, and one of your practices is check it.
Yes.
Every day. So what are the practical practices that we can stay on our game?
That's so good.
For those of us that we already know, and then we're going to stay on that game.
Yeah, that's so great. It's. I'm going to give a little background. So you could say that game, that purpose, is an intention. And there's a phrase that I've heard for many years. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Mm. And I ask people, why did they pave the road to hell with good intentions? Why didn't they pave it with bad intentions? And my explanation for that is because people confuse intention with action. So, given the way our brains are designed, just having an intention doesn't mean you will act on it. So there's two other things that need to happen to have you change the way you're acting. One is you need an environment that reminds you to act. So, I have a meditation cushion off to my left to remind me to meditate. And I have a meditation cushion in my bedroom to remind me to meditate. So that's one thing. You put things in your environment. And then the other thing you need to do is create practices, rituals. So in the beginning, for me, I had my calling everywhere. I had it posted on the wall, on my computer. I had reminders throughout the day. One of the most moving things that happened to me was 22 years ago. I led a transformational program. You're familiar with it, the Forum in the Middle East, in Israel. And then on the day off after the Forum, I went to the Sinai Desert and for a day. And I was in the Sinai, and on the way back to Israel to fly back to Tel Aviv, I had an interaction with a Bedouin taxi driver. What that means there is he had an old car, and you bargain, you negotiate. I want you to take me to Taba, and they say how much, and then you say no this, and then they say that, and then you agree on a price. So there we are. The sun is setting. We're driving along this road. He's going very fast with my colleague, and all of a sudden, he stops the car, half on the road, half off the road, and he takes out his prayer mat and starts praying by the side of the taxi. And he comes back in the car. I don't speak Arabic. My colleague did. I said, please ask him what that was like for him. And this is what he said. I still remember it like it was yesterday. He said, it was so important that I did that. And I said, ask him why. And my colleague asked him why. And he said, ever since the two of you got in the car, my brain was going, I didn't charge you enough money. I'm going to have to drive back empty for an hour. I'm going to miss dinner with my family. This is a mistake. After I prayed, I went, this is the will of Allah. And I was at peace. He said, if I didn't do that 5 times a day, I'd be a madman. Mm. And so that's an example of a structure, a practice, a ritual to connect you with something bigger than your ego, bigger than your thoughts. So, I didn't convert to Islam, but what I did start doing is I put 5 reminders in my calendar that would go off with a bell, and it'd say, are you living your calling? Or are you doing this? Or things to remind me to pause and to connect. I also, as you have, a meditation practice. And when I meditate, I dedicate it to empower me to better live my calling. I have a practice of seeing where I've done things inconsistent. And as soon as I see I've done things inconsistent, I reach out and make amends, apologize, clean up the mess. I have people in my life who know my calling, and I talk to them regularly so they can point things out if I don't see it. I have the privilege, like you do, of working with people, and I know that if I'm not connected to my purpose, when I work with people, I won't be as useful. So even just talking to you now is a practice that has me connect more to what my purpose is. So that I could go on, but reading books that connect you to living your purpose. The biggest thing that I did, because I kept failing and failing and failing, is I distinguished what are the enemies of living my calling. You know, what are the automatic ways of being that I wound up with from childhood or maybe before childhood that are inconsistent? And I have it on a display, you know, that I never go anywhere without it. I'm sure people can't see it, but you know, this is what I call my operating system. And I did this 5 years ago, and I keep it in plastic because sometimes I add things. Oh, I discover something else that, you know, so down one side, it says I have to be right. So I identified all the automatic ways of being and acting that are inconsistent, and I always have it within hand's reach. Even if I travel around the world, I take it. You know, I was leading a workshop in a yoga studio, and someone said, "Why don't you burn it?" And I said, you can't get rid of this.
Yes.
So the reason I keep it near me is to remind me I'm human. You know, I'm not a master. I'm on the path of mastery, and I always have to see who the opponent is. And this is the opponent of living my purpose.
What a great way. What a great, smart way to see ourselves.
Yeah.
And if I may add something to it,
sure.
The first time that I was getting to know that I'm not my thought, I'm not the conversation in my head and all that, and starting to have that gap be bigger and bigger to see myself, and then all those, you said, component that I think it's me. So I wanted to go and walk. And every time I had so many excuses to not go and walk in the morning. And then one day I remember so vividly, and as funny as it seems or sounds, but so real for me, that I said to myself, I'm going to go and walk before Nushin wakes up. So it was just like, I got out of the door and I went for 2-3 miles walk. And it was so liberating.
Yeah.
And I got it that, oh my gosh, there is somebody else living in me that it just doesn't want me to do the things I want to do. So what a great practice.
Yeah, you know, and the neuroscientists will argue with that description. What they'll say is, no, you just have brain patterns. But the wonderful thing about the brain is that any age, you can always create new ones.
Yes.
You know, the saying that I love is, we all wound up being a particular way, and no one is stuck being who they wound up being.
Yes.
And then, as with a coach, I think it's easier to distinguish who did you wind up being that isn't really you. It's just who you wound up, so that you can really get your arms around it. Instead of trying to get rid of it, you can go, oh, that's the way I wound up. And, you know, this is the way I wound up, that operating system. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just the way I wound up.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. And as you mentioned, the science is not talking about the neuroplasticity.
Exactly.
That the neurons can be stretched and can be rewrite or, just rewire.
And you don't get rid of the old one, but when the trigger happens that might trigger the old one, through practice, you now have another pathway, another choice. So there's a moment of choice.
Yes.
Yep. And in my own experience, the moment of choice goes so fast, you miss it. So, but then you see afterwards, oh, I didn't make the right choice there. And then you clean it up. And the more you practice that, the closer and closer and closer you get to staying present. Ellen Langer, a psychologist at Harvard, who's like the queen or the empress of mindfulness. She says you're either mindful or you're mindless.
Mm.
And whatever practices are going to keep you present so that in the moment you can see yourself rather than be on automatic. Those are the practices one ought to start cultivating.
Yes. What a wonderful practices. And Alan, I know I can talk to you for hours and hours and hours and just get to your wisdom and
Yeah.
your, light and heart. And I can just feel it from, when you are California, I'm in Arizona, I still can feel it.
Yeah.
And I just want to honor your time.
Thank you.
For that, anything else you would like to add to this?
Yeah. For me, it's a privilege to have this conversation with you. That's number one. It's a privilege to know that other people are listening to our conversation. And my intention is that this be useful for people, that they be, if they're on the verge of coming up and creating a big game for their life, that they take the next step. If they already are playing a big game, that they be kind to themselves. And they make sure they have the appropriate structures and environment and practices in their life that support them in winning, because the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and good intentions won't win the game.
Not always the end of where we wanted to go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I can promise you from my own part,
yes,
that people will listen.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
That's great.
And it's going to impact.
Great.
Whomever is listening.
Yes, very good. Well, thank you for that. I live to be a contribution, and thanks for expanding the arena in which I get to play.
And thank you so much for your time and wisdom.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.